Welcome to this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on families and households, looking at feminism and the family. The feminist view of the family is often applied to different areas of the module, for example, examining gender roles and the impact of social policies on family life. However, each of the different branches of feminism have contributed to our understanding of family life, and so it's worth being able to examine each of these branches with respect to the family. Liberal feminists argue there is a march of progress towards equality in the family, and they point to evidence of changing social policies in society that have enabled women to become more ambitious in their career choices. This has a knock-on effect of changing the roles of males and females within the household. Marxist feminists have primarily been concerned with gender roles within the family, seeing women as being exploited by both capitalism and by males, as despite working in paid employment, many women are still expected to complete unpaid labour in the home. And we'll look at this in a separate video on the work of Delphi and Leonard and why women's work is often viewed in this way by patriarchal society. Radical feminists are focused on the confines of marriage for women and how the family is an unequal institution that is patriarchal in nature, putting the needs of men before those of women. They also examine power relationships in the family and the way in which males use financial and physical power, amongst other methods, to control women. In this video, we are going to look in a bit more depth at these ideas. Liberal feminists point to the range of social policies that have improved the lives of women over the past 60 years. These policies have had both a direct and indirect impact on family life, with policies that have encouraged female employment having indirect impacts, such as raising girls' career aspirations and encouraging them to delay marriage and childbearing in order to develop a career. A further impact is the changes to gender roles as a result of women's paid employment. With an increasing focus on careers for women, this alters power relationships within the family. Policies such as the Equal Pay Act, Sex Discrimination Act and the Equality Act were all aimed to make employment practices fair and equal for women and men. A more direct impact on the family is policies that have tackled women's reproductive rights, with both the legalisation of abortion and the availability of the contraceptive pill on prescription covered by family planning acts. This gave women control over the decision to have or to not have children. This has impacted on the family by raising the average age of women when they have their first child, their age at first marriage, and decreasing the fertility rate, which impacts on the number of children in society. A final consideration is rights within marriage. Prior to the Divorce Reform Act of 1969, it was more difficult for women to leave their husband, but now 2/3 of divorces are requested by females, indicating a dramatic shift in power relationships in marriage. The exclusion of the marital rape clause in 1992 also benefited women's positions within a marriage. Prior to the removal of this clause, it was legal for a man to force his wife into sexual intercourse, as it was assumed that through her marriage vows she had consented to the act as part of her marital duties. The fact that this was only removed in 1992 shows the extent of how long females have been perceived as male property in the eyes of the law. Marxist feminists are focused on the unequal relationships between males and females as a result of the capitalist system. Domestic labour is often unpaid, and there is an unfair expectation on women to complete this labour, including childcare, housework and the emotional support of the family. Often this will be alongside paid work, particularly in contemporary society, and this results in what feminists have described as the dual burden and the triple shift. A further contribution of Marxist feminists is to discuss the social expectations of women to provide emotional support to workers, and the idea that women are treated as the slaves of wage slaves. And here we see the contributions of the likes of Fran Ansley and how women absorb the pressures of males and capitalism. A further point that can be made is the role of women as being part of a reserve army of labour, used to bolster the workforce in times of economic boom, and how they're expected to return to the home when the economy contracts. We can also examine the economic impacts of providing free labour in the home, with women's work being seen as unpaid in the home, but this would carry a wage if it was performed in the public sector. Radical feminists focus largely on the patriarchal nature of the family and how there is an unequal power balance throughout family life in favour of men. They highlight the use of coercive power by males in different formats. physical, psychological, sexual and financial control over females by males. They also focus on the inequalities in decision making in the family, which are often dominated by males and made in the interest of males. Radical feminists will also discuss the social expectations of women to play the role of wife and mother, and they challenge the notion of gendered socialisation for girls into passive and submissive roles. There are other feminist approaches that are briefly mentioned elsewhere in the family part of the specification, with post-structural and postmodern feminism being discussed within Stacey's research into the different experiences of women and the kinship networks they develop as responses to divorce and death of their partners. She examines ideas that friends can fill in for the family, particularly amongst communities of divorced women, acting as a surrogate support network for single mothers. And McRobbie has suggested that in contemporary society there has been the birth of neoliberal feminism, focused on empowerment and the expectations for women to have it all, a lifestyle built upon consumption. This can have negative impacts, however, with increased pressure in work, increased pressure on having the perfect family, and increased expectations of a woman's appearance. Questions remain, however, over whether this is empowerment or whether it sets unrealistic expectations for women, and acts as a source of control over their bodies and their aspirations. Feminism is incredibly relevant in our understanding of the family. Feminist thought has shaped our understanding of particular subtopics such as changing gender roles, changes in relationships within the family, changing family structures and childhood experiences, as well as touching on issues of demography. It is also relevant to the ideas within the postmodern and late modern views of the family. Greater freedom of choice of women has altered the dynamics of relationships, and rather than marry for security, women are choosing partners that are right for them personally. This has subsequent effects on the types of family structure, with increasing lone parent and reconstituted families, as well as the delay of marriage, people opting not to have children, and people remaining single. Feminists, however, have been criticised for a lack of a coherent approach. Some feminists have argued that the freedom to choose is the most important aspect of feminism, while others suggest that women should want to work rather than stay at home as it empowers others. Additionally, some forms of feminism are argued to focus specifically on the interests of white middle-class women, rather than examining the greater diversity and intersectionality of women's experiences. Often more attention is paid to the interests of white women than women of colour, or disability, or lower social classes, and this is a criticism of the approach. However, it's hard to suggest that feminism has not had a long-lasting and influential impact on family life. That concludes this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on families and households, looking at feminism and the family. Thanks for watching.